The question about what to do about the Tar River University neighborhood in Greenville has been the subject of conversation at the City Council for many, many, many years. There have been all sorts of programs that have been put in place over there. And I believe it was 2012, the Greenville City Council decided to change course and allow 4 unrelated people to live in a rental home. There was opposition to that, and there's been discussion about it. It became an issue during the City Council election campaigns last year. And last Thursday night, a motion was made and passed by the Greenville City Council to change that rule back from 4 unrelated people to 3 unrelated people in this area they call the UNRI overlay area, which essentially is the Tar River University neighborhood, the area between 5th Street and the Tar River, which is north of the East Carolina University campus. We're going to talk about that this morning, and it's going to be the subject of a couple of shows this week. So actually, we're going to have a little debate here this morning, and then the guys on Greenville Grit will be debating it also and talking about it on Wednesday night at 6:30 on here on 103.7 and Cable 7. But this morning, I'm really happy to have 2 points of view on it and 2 folks that have differing points of view, and we're going to talk about this issue and try to flesh it out a little bit and get both sides of the issue out so the citizens can decide. Marion Blackburn is here. Marion is a city council person. She represents District 3, where this overlay area, the Tar River University neighborhood, is. She made the motion, I believe, am I right, to change this rule?
I did.
On Thursday night. And my friend Jim Blunt, who I've known for many years, who is a local businessman, and Jim owns homes down in this area. Jim, so this is an area you're very interested in, and you've been trying to encourage the City Council not to change this rule back. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Good to see you both. How are you?
Doing well.
Doing well.
Thank you both for being here. You know, I'm calling this a debate, but it really is going to be a discussion. But I think you guys have different points of view, so I think we can kind of debate it. I don't really have any format in mind. Let's chat about it. Let me start with you, Marion. The Tar River University neighborhood area is an area that has gotten so much attention, I think, personally, too much attention from the City Council over the years. And now here we go again, looking at it again and trying to tweak it without a whole lot of information yet. How many months has it been since this rule went into place?
Well, the rule has been in place for 14 months. And let me just say that Jim and I agree on a whole lot of things, and so I hope we'll have an opportunity this morning to indicate some of our common ground. But the rule's been in place for 14 months. It was first initiated, and it's continually been a top-down kind of process.
Not to interrupt you, but was the rule passed 14 months ago? My question really is, how many months have we seen that, you know, since people have been allowed to rent to 4 people?
The rule was actually passed, I believe, in October of 2012. When you look at all the administrative details that take place, and the panel associated with this overlay started to meet in December. So we can say roughly December 2012. So roughly the calendar year 2013.
We got about 1 year of data to show whether the crime's been a problem, the parking's been a problem, and those kind of things.
Well, I think, you know, and people do, you know, and we can go ahead and start talking about crime if you'd like, but really when you're looking at patterns, 1 year is you know, too short of a time, for instance, to assess crime. You can get into kind of dangerous territory when you try to start making assumptions between 2 unrelated things. But what I say, and the reason I initiated this action, was because we really have a mixed message, and we need to be clear on our message, which is we want to encourage stability in the university neighborhood. It's right beside our university. It really is a very central place to our community, very central to many of us, whether we live there or not. It's also sort of the front door to the university. So we have 2 conflicting policies right now. We want to increase stability and home ownership in the university area, and yet at the same time we've got this other policy that is incentivizing and encouraging rental uses. So the reason I initiated this process was because we need to reconcile our message, because right now we've got conflicting policies. There is room for, a lot of folks say, well, this is just about one person. To be sure, one person isn't that important. There were issues with this policy from the start in terms of how it was devised, how the standards were set up for when you could have that fourth person. So what we need to do is back up. We need to re-examine the policy. We need to say if we're going to have a fourth person in a house, we need to have standards that make sense. We need to have, for instance, 1,500 square feet is a very small house. So what we need to do is just back up and look at it. The fourth person isn't a deal breaker.
1,500 square feet is the minimum square footage to have 4 bedrooms?
It is the minimum to have that fourth person now.
But now let me ask you this. The rule also is, though, that you must have 4 bedrooms to have 4 renters. Is that correct?
I believe that is the rule, but what you will see happening now is a living room that has a window and a closet and is called a bedroom. And there's no shortage of that.
Are students going to rent that?
Well, Henry, I've been a student, you've been a student.
I wouldn't have rented a closet to live in, I can tell you that, and I was as broke as anybody's ever been.
Another reason that I'm very interested in initiating us to re-examine this policy, students are a very vulnerable population. They generally have a very limited income, and let's face it, they are in a vulnerable position where they are less likely to speak up and make demands because they really are in someone else's house. They are, subject to whatever that homeowner, the landlord, imposes on them. So I think it's really important to speak up for students who are vulnerable.
I want to get Jim in here and ask him something, but before, Jim, just bear with me 1 second. I just want to, just in a sentence, can you tell me what the issue is with 4 people living in a house? What is the problem with that? What is the reason that you think that is a problem and you made the motion to kill that?
Well, it's not the fourth person. We can initiate other ways to look at occupancy. For instance, a special use permit that would allow a fourth person, where we can re-examine those standards. And I am not averse to a special use permit.
What problems do 4 people living in a home create?
Henry, in your neighborhood, what's the occupancy limit, for instance, in your neighborhood?
I think, I don't really know the answer to that, but, just like in this neighborhood, if there are 15 people that live in a family, they can live in any of these homes. They just can't, if they're not related, they can't.
Families generally act in certain sort of coherent ways. They're doing things together. They have a rhythm and a pace and a schedule that is very similar. When you start to put many unrelated people together, what happens is you have a fracturing of the dynamic. You have a lot of coming and going. You have parking. But what you also have is conditions that are not healthy for the renters.
But when you say that, Marion, it sounds like you're saying that the problem is the students, and we live in a university. Are you afraid that that you're going to sound like you're against students in a community that is very driven economically by students?
I think it's real interesting that you say that. When I am a full-time student myself, I've lived in the university area for years. As a matter of fact, I had my wedding reception in the university community. So I am certainly very pro-students. I'm advocating for students to have good living conditions, that they get their deposits back, that the roofs don't leak, and the houses aren't falling apart around them. The only thing I'm saying about the fourth person is let's do it rationally and reasonably, and let's not just say we're going to do it in only one area. Let's look at, do we have a logical reason for it?
All right, Jim, that's a lot. That's a lot of stuff there. I want to give you a chance to respond. I see you taking notes over there. What's the argument to keep this at 4 unrelated people?
Well, thanks for having me here this morning, Henry. I need to correct one thing you said. I don't own any homes over there. I own apartments and duplexes. Okay, good. So this rule has...
It doesn't affect you
doesn't
anyway,
affect
right?
me at all.
Yeah. So
no.
why are you arguing?
Well, here's why I'm arguing. I believe in a safe, secure, strong, clean neighborhood over there. I moved back to Greenville in 2000 after spending 7 or 8 years in Washington, D.C. And I decided to start acquiring these properties over in the university area when things were really on the decline over there. So over the years, we've seen this progressive, positive rehabilitation, revitalization of Uptown, and I just believe in a really strong, vibrant center city, that whole area. So I moved back here and started a family, and this is a business for me. When the rule passed, I have seen an increase in better renters, more renter retention from the students, and the houses are just cleaning up. They're fixing them up. That fourth person adds about $6,000 per property a year to each individual property. That fourth person does. So that's a lot of money. I mean, you multiply that over, we got 44 houses that have been approved right now. I mean, that's a lot of money back into the university neighborhood. It's really interesting. You brought up something. You said, I was listening when we were out in the lobby. You said, we really haven't had enough data to see where we are on this yet. We have calculated about $5.5 million has been put into the university neighborhood in the last 18 months. That's a lot of money. That's a whole lot of money for one neighborhood. Crime is going down. As I said, rental retention's up. It's one interesting fact we're seeing is a lot of the students that left in 2006, 2007, 2008 to go to the big box, communities outside of Greenville.
The amusement parks.
The amusement parks. Well, the newness is worn off. Yeah. The newness is worn off.
So they want to walk to class.
They want to walk to class. They want to live close to what's going on uptown with Bianca's work and Tony Corey's work and Don Edwards. They want to be involved in what's going on in the local neighborhood. So we're seeing a big migration back toward the university neighborhood. And we understand, the students are the lifeblood of Greenville. I mean, look, I grew up in Greenville. It was a sleepy town in the 1980s before I left to go away from school. But it's changed a lot, and we've got to embrace that. ECU is the 15th fastest growing university in the United States right now. 15th fastest growing university in the United States, second largest in North Carolina. Now, you think about that tied right into that next to that neighborhood. I mean, that's just basic economics when you've got people that are going to want to live in that neighborhood.
Let me play devil's advocate with you like I did with
Sure.
Marion, though. Students party. Mm-hmm. They stay up late. They bring their friends over for the parties, and they park everywhere. And you have families that live in that neighborhood. So is that the essence of what we're talking about here? Is student behavior?
I think that my wife's a psychologist, so I know about the brain from 18 to 22. They don't make the best decisions sometimes. Students don't, but these are students, and they came here to go to East Carolina, and they're going to make decisions that probably aren't the best. But we all grow up, and I think that it's an interesting. I was looking at of how we got here, and the argument of how we got here and this whole process is really interesting because when I moved back to Greenville, I really didn't start paying close attention to the university area, and then as we started acquiring properties and things started to progress, and when we had the election with Mayor Pat Dunn, I was under I didn't really figure out how all this came about with UNRI, but it was my indication that the ECU Board of Trustees had a lot of concerns about the university area, and they were very concerned about the decline of the neighborhood. And so there was a vision statement sent over by either David Brody or Craig Souza about we've got to do something about this neighborhood. It's on the decline. We're getting a lot of complaints from parents, from alumni, and so they put a vision statement in place, which went on to Pat Dunn, and the election occurred, and then Pat Dunn was defeated, and Mayor Alan Thomas came in. And my information says that Mayor Thomas was invited to go into the Truna neighborhood by Truna to get support for a recovery plan for the neighborhood. And so this was in January of 2012. So in January of 2012, Truna, Mayor Thomas, ECU sat down for a meeting, and that went from January to spring to the fall, and there was you're shaking your head, Marion, but you were aware of these meetings, and so I just wanted to make sure that
let's not get hung up on details of when things particularly happen. I think the bottom line that you're trying to say, Jim, is that the university has had a concern about this neighborhood, and reasonably so. I mean, we've had We've had some shootings over there. We've had some kids that have been assaulted. We've had home invasions. I know we even had an ECU baseball player over there shot a few years ago. And so, Marion, let me throw it back to you for some response to some of Jim's comments. And also, while I'm at it, let's talk about the issue. You mentioned home ownership. And I would ask both of you this question. Is it reasonable to expect, I mean, Greenville is not landlocked. We have many benefits here that a lot of communities don't. I lived in Chapel Hill for a few years, and you know, people were just clamoring on trying to get on top of each other in Chapel Hill. In Greenville, we're growing in all directions. There's land to grow and area for Greenville to expand into. You know, I was out at the new Walmart area this weekend. It's the first time I've driven out there since everything's been open. There's not just the Walmart, but strip centers, and I mean, it's a beautiful project. But look at that area of town, and things are going out in that direction. They're going out down Highway 11. We're not landlocked, so people have options on where to buy homes. Are families, is it a legitimate goal, a reasonable goal to think that that area of Greenville was going to be an area where a man's going to buy a home and take his children and live in there these days?
It absolutely is. We're seeing throughout the country, and you can look in Raleigh and Charlotte, urban centers are growing. They're revitalized. People want to live in urban centers. I think Jim mentioned the work taking place in our downtown. People come in, they work at the university. We have a new Greenway segment that's going to go from the town common out to the hospital. You're going to be able to ride your bike to the hospital. We have lots of med students. We have lots of new doctors. So absolutely, this is an area that people are gravitating to. Regardless of, you know, trends, this is an area that is a delight to live in. I've spent a lot of time living there. Let's just sort of break it down, though. This city has about $2.4 billion in tax base, which is in single-family homes. That's very important. My goal in looking at this, in looking at what we're doing in the university
Let me
community.
get you to clarify that. You say it's in single-family homes. I mean, people who own the rental homes pay taxes too.
Absolutely, and what we want to do is protect everyone's home values. We want to discourage any kind of an artificial inflation of property values. We want stable, long-term property values. I just want to go back to two things, though. Jim was talking about the ECU vision statement. The vision statement was approved by the City Council, and I believe it was in 2009. That was a very important document, and it does lay out some goals. Let's just go back, though, and be clear. East Carolina University opposed raising the occupancy limit to 4. When this initiative came out, ECU issued a statement opposing it. So what we need to do is...
The administration issued it, but there were several students that came out for it.
And
is that accurate?
Matt Paskey came and spoke. I know Matt. He's a good friend. I think that what often happens is that when there are interests that may be financial, it has allowed some people to think it's in their best interest as a renter. But let's be clear. As a renter, my best interest is to have a safe home that's well maintained, where I have enough room and I have enough area and I have enough parking to have a good quality of life. And that's very important. And then the rent should also be affordable. But when we're adding that fourth person and we're raising the rent another $400 a month, we've not reduced rent for anybody. We've just made for a tighter living space.
Jim, I want you to respond to that, and we got to get a commercial break in. Is this about greed? Is this about landlords wanting to make more money? I mean, let's face it, these guys are in business. They want to make money.
Absolutely. Look, I'm here, there's no secret, I'm here representing a business interest. I'm a business person. And the business community got very squirrely last week when this amendment was brought up about amateurization, when you're talking about the 18 months where you would actually phase out the fourth person. That is a very big concern for them.
And let's break that down for people who don't understand it. Basically, what that would mean is if you've gone to the bank and borrowed money based on this duly passed law by the city of Greenville, but now you got to go to the bank and say, look, I'm sorry, but the city council changed this rule, and in 18 months, I'm not going to be able to make my payments.
That's correct. You're joint and several, your guarantee signed, the money's been loaned, and you've got to honor that. So, but back to your question, no, we live in a capitalist society. I mean, really, if you look at the top money makers in Greenville, I would say real estate has to rank in the top 5. You got the university, the hospital, government, city government. So, yeah I mean, everybody, this is, it's tough to make a living in Eastern North Carolina, and real estate's a big part of it.
And you know, it's big business in Greenville. Otherwise,
It
they
is.
wouldn't keep putting 4 pools and things at these new apartment complexes on the outskirts of town. Mary, let me go back to you again. The mayor is in this morning's Daily Reflector, and his comments are that, you know, the fangs are out, and that, you know, there's obviously some very emotional and highly charged feelings between some of the members of the city council, and everybody's looking at this and saying, wow, you know, has this become too personal? Is it going, you know, is it going to affect what is done with the city? And then they look at your agenda and they say, well, you know, exactly what is Marion's agenda? And people are beginning to say that, you know, there's an anti-business sentiment here by the city council, maybe even an anti-student sentiment here in a community. I threw the question out on Facebook last night, and most of the responses I got back were, why is the city council not working in the best interest of the students? So the question that I have for you is, are you concerned that the city council is going to get an anti-business, anti-student reputation that's going to affect, you know, people wanting to come here?
Well, when I heard that, I was actually shocked, because I think that sometimes you can cry wolf, and it can create a sense of distortion of what's really going on. So let's look at what's really going on. I'm a small business person. I have been for 20 years, self-employed. I also own my own house, so I've done the refinancing. I understand the nuts and bolts of finance and running a business. I also understand that you make business decisions. You have to do an environmental landscape and look at the conditions when you make those business decisions. So I'm absolutely not small business. I'm not against in any way small business. As a matter of fact, I have encouraged the grants, our economic incentives, our uptown businesses, anything we can do to promote small business. Small business really is the backbone of our nation and our city. Now, as far as being, you know, anti-student, I have been a student advocate. I've been a renter's advocate. That's probably what's gotten me in trouble, because I do speak up for students. I do speak up for renters. I want students to have safe housing that's repaired. I want students to get their deposits back. I want students to have fun and have a great quality of life, and I'm working hard for that.
Has that been a big issue over there? I mean, you can't roll that out there without following up with it. Are you saying that some of the landlords over there have not given back their deposits, have not kept up their properties and that kind of thing? That's a big part of this discussion.
It is routine for students and renters to not receive their deposits back. During last fall's campaign, I went to every single house in the 3rd District, and the conditions I saw were heartbreaking, literally. I saw homes that were rotting.
Let's let Jim respond to that.
Sure. Yeah, when talking about the article in the paper, anti-business, you know, it's interesting. That's the first time I've ever been in front of city council last week, and I had an upward basketball game Saturday morning with my kids, and I rolled in, and I'm amazed how many people watch the city council tapes. And 3 or 4 people came up to me and said,
Well, the Olympics are on, so they're getting good ratings.
That's right. So anyway, I had several, you know, business folks come up to me when my kids were playing basketball, and, you know, saying, you know, Jim, this amateurization piece is scary. You know, when you start taking money back away from people who've already invested in something, that's really scary. So that was one thing. And then talking about the anti-students, you know, in this day and age, when I went to college, you know, parents dropped me off and picked me up 4 years later. These parents these days are helicopter parents. They're asking questions about your property, the safety. You know, we heard about the shootings uptown many years ago. Is this place safe? I have to look those parents in the eye when I sign a lease with them and say, yes, it is, and I'm going to take care of your kids. So there's a big investment, not only financially, but emotionally and personally with these students. Now, backing up, you asked about the poor living conditions. Yes, I mean, there's bad landlords in every town. There's good landlords. There's bad lawyers, good doctors, bad doctors. And that's part of every business. But our core group that's worked on this initiative has really worked hard to create some really nice properties. I mean, guys like Bob Dietrich and Bob Monticello and Jeff Tance, these guys are, you know, they really take pride in their properties.
I don't want to run out of time.
Okay.
Marion, Jim has brought up the amortization thing a couple times. And with regard to that, your motion that did not pass was to try to stop this immediately. To even with the folks who have just signed leases with people, that you wanted them out of there in 18 months. Is that not accurate? You're shaking your head.
Well, I was shaking my head because 18 months is not immediate. Let me explain what my motion was. And I've been meeting with Jim and with some of the...
Not to interrupt you, but again, but the other part of that while you're answering the question is, you know, does it show an insensitivity to these guys that went and borrowed the money based on the fact that they could rent to 4 people? Now you can answer it.
I've been meeting with Jim and some other landlords. We've been talking. We have lots of common ground. My interest is in moving forward with the common ground. The 4th person in a house is not the deal breaker. Let's do it under reasonable circumstances. For instance, one possibility is a special use permit. We've agreed that 1,500 square feet is small. So let's back it up and let's do a rational set of guidelines. Now, the amortization was not anything except to say the permits that have been issued under the current circumstances, let's go ahead and begin looking at phasing those out while we phase in the new guidelines. And that was what I was trying to do. I also want to say that, you know, the investments that have been made, how grateful we are as a city, how grateful I am because it's my district to see these investments, folks like Jim, Dr. Dietrich, Jeff Tant, Bob Montequillo, they have invested, and we're grateful for that. A lot of these investments, maybe most of them, would have been made anyway without the 4th person. When you look at the homes where the permit for the 4th person have been issued, most of those homes were purchased prior to the passage of this ordinance. So a lot of those improvements would have happened anyway. If we do phase out these current circumstances, even in the interim, you can continue to rent to that 4th person for the next year and a half. Hopefully we'll have a new set of circumstances in place so where you can continue with your business model, if that's what your business model is, and still have that 4th person.
All right, I want to close it out because we're out of time, but I want to give you both a chance. And we started with Marion, so Jim, we'll start with you, and then Marion can finish up. It seems to me like you've got 2 different philosophies here. Marion says high density equals higher deterioration of the neighborhood. Your group is saying, Jim, allow us to rent to 4 students, and we'll keep a bad element out of this neighborhood. It'll be students, and all the problems that come with students, but at least we can keep the bad element that had started to infiltrate this neighborhood. Is that an accurate depiction? And if you would, both of you, give me about a 45-second wrap up. Just start with Jim.
Yeah, I think that what the 4th person does is it creates an added revenue stream to that piece of property, which actually allows you to elevate the rent, which brings in better renters. And we are flushing out. There's been gang activity over there, which is fleshing out now. Our core group is actually putting together an acquisitions team to buy distressed properties on Mead, Willow, and Stancil that have had gang activity there. So it does add a revenue stream. We believe in a clean, safe neighborhood. The 4th person has added investment to that process. We're at $5.5 million in about 18 months in the area, which is a tremendous amount of money, tremendous amount of capital to add into an area. And we feel that the process should be continued. My goal would be to keep the overlay in place for another 12 months. I think Rick Croskery was the deciding vote to keep that amateurization piece. I think he understands the business side of things a little better than some of the other council members. We need to get Marion's
last go. Marion, why not wait a while? What's the rush to do this? Give us your last comments here.
I think that we have a bit of a mess that was begun because this policy was not crafted in a reasonable, rational way. Let's step back. Let's say if this is a direction we want to go, let's apply some good thinking to it, and let's come up with a better policy. I want to continue working with landlords. These engaged landlords are doing a great job, so I want to continue to work with them. This is a city issue, however, and we need to look at it, and we need to make sure it is the best policy moving forward. Make sure we're encouraging stability and long-term property values and home ownership while we make sure that our students have a great, safe place to live. All
right, we're going to have to leave it there. Great debate. Great conversation. It will continue. Now the process will go to the planning and zoning. Planning and zoning will either pass it or deny it, and it'll come back to the Greenville City Council one way or the other, and then we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting. So thanks to Marion Blackburn for being here, and also to Jim Blunt. And they're shaking hands, ladies and gentlemen. Great
no,
conversation.
We're friends. We've been friends prior to this.
Great conversation.